Right, good morning everybody. I guess the moral of this report is so close. For all four of the amber goals that we're looking at, levels of service, capital project delivery, planning for capital projects, we are like within 1% of where we want to be. That's picked up a lot from the start of the year, and that's, I think, the result of a lot of focus at management team level around this stuff. Levels of service have picked up nearly 5%. There's no reason to believe we won't get that extra percent and end up where we want to be. So just running through them one by one, levels of service, if we can just pick up 2 or 3 goals, and there are 2 or 3 in the offing, we will make the 85%. Capital projects, 84.8, looking for 85. That should come right. And planning for capital, both March and June dates are well out. We've got plenty of time left and they're on track to hit those goals. So we're feeding that end of the pipe to enable the delivery to happen. The red there around value for money is because we do have a couple of activity budgets that are overspent, notably stormwater and wastewater collectively amount to about 4.6 in overspend forecast for year end, not current. And there are reasons for that are probably more available in the finance report when you get to the capital and finance reports. A couple of other things of note. We just followed up on some questions from councillors. There was a further question from Councillor Harrison Hunt on consenting, and there are some responses there that basically say, look, consent volumes are 20% greater. They've been working on overtime as a method of dealing with that. It's not as simple as simply recruiting more people. Even if you've got the money, the people are very hard to get. There's a lot of competition between the metros to get these people. There's some others there on code compliance and building inspections, again relying on overtime, but also pointing out the increases in performance that have happened, as well as contractors and remote inspection technology. Now, all I can do is reflect what the head of service has put here. We have asked that heads be present for these briefings. Unfortunately, Stefan couldn't be present today, but he's provided a fairly fulsome reply there. There was a follow-up question from Councillor Johansson on the water supply, why the trend is reversed on water consumption. The figures have been provided there, but unfortunately there's no clear rationale as to why there's been a reverse in the trend. The only thing I can really point out is that 298 litres today, litres per day, 261 and 278 are all reasonably close to each other. There may be some seasonal variation in that, but the head of is not confident in prescribing a reason to it at this point. And they're the 2 follow-ups we've done. If you need further information, I'm happy to go try to get it for you.
Hey, thank you, Peter. It's always a good report, and I appreciate your introduction to it. Tyler, then Yanni.
Cheers, Peter, for that. That's awesome. If there's anything off the top of your head, with that 20% uptick in resource consents, is there projected to be a downturn in resource consents?
I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is there's been discussion that Christchurch at 20% greater is kind of out of kilter with a lot of the country where things have slumped. So we seem to be a bit of an engine room, and I'm not sure that anybody can actually predict with real rigour what will happen a year from now.
Okay.
But again, I can follow up with Stefan and see if we can get some more data for you.
Yeah, sure.
There are projections. I just don't know them off the top of my head.
Yeah, no worries. And with that backlog, are we expecting to potentially see some changes or proposals within the annual plan over the next financial year in regards to trying to, remediate that backlog?
Well, I'm not aware of any in the current annual plan.
Okay.
Current proposed annual plan.
Yep.
So the answer to that, I think for 25-26 is there are none proposed at the moment.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Yanni.
Thanks. I was just interested in the response to the water supply, and it basically said that the excess water charging continues to have a positive impact on peak demand periods, yet we're consuming more water than we have before. So we've brought in the excess charging, and yet water use is going up, not down. So is there a way? I mean, we did have a presentation, I think, maybe a year ago on the excess water charging and the impact that it was having. But it'd be quite good to understand in terms of revenue and water use, what's happening in terms of those excess water charges. Are we able to get like just a memo that gives us a bit more detail? Because when I read the response, it's hard to comprehend how we've brought in excess water charging, and yet we're using more water, and apparently we're reducing the peak demand.
I understand your focus. Look, rather than make something up, I could throw to Gavin, who's just over here, but I suggest that maybe giving him the ability to come back with a composed response would be better.
Or just a memo, particularly around the revenue as well.
We'll do a memo.
Cool. And then just the other question I had around the consenting was, you talk about the inspections and the failure rate, and I was just wondering, are you seeing any trends in terms of either developers or types of buildings that are failing the inspections? And I'm particularly interested, obviously we've had the case of the engineer that's been brought to our attention as well, so just wondering what we're doing to look at that kind of wider issue around what's the cause behind the failures, and if there's any trends that we can be understanding.
Who are you directing that at, Yanni?
Well, I guess that's obviously Stephen.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take that. Someone can take that on notice. Yep, great. So we'll pick that up. Okay.
Yeah, because I guess the question for me is, do we need to...
Is your mic on?
I guess the question for me is around, I think it's a statutory requirement in terms of the inspection times, but obviously we're wanting to spend enough time to do it properly and have a good job of looking at what we need to look at. So I did wonder whether we need to think about changing the targets.
I mean, we'll get Stefan to come back, but there'll be an assurance aspect that sits within being a BCA that means that they've got certain criteria they've got to meet and things. So, okay, so Mark.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the a table on page 19 of our report, and it's got the delivery percentage as a column. And I've noticed there's a couple of outliers in there which are on the rather low side. One being the technical services and design, down at 33%. That seems really out of line with everything else in the table.
I think that may have been canvassed here 1 or 2 meetings ago, and what we came to there was that they have a very small number of levels of service, so quite vulnerable to just a single light going, and that they were experiencing some form of IT issue that affected their only 2 levels of service.
Right. Yep. So it's a bit of
I think from memory that's where we got to on that one.
very good. And the only other one that sort of sticks out to me there is transport, again at 48%. It's way down, so I'll leave that with you.
If I could just ask the desk to flick to page 19 on the big screen, it just makes the chat a little bit easier. 19 on yes, that one. So looking at that, I guess you call it a bubble diagram at the top, levels of service are on the vertical axis, and you can see transport is that lowest large circle there. And this is a good mud map for the whole organisation, in effect, because to the left there you can also see on the horizontal axis water supply and wastewater in the overspend, drifting in the overspend direction. So the really quick and dirty way to see where we're up to is what do the outliers look like on this map. If they're drifting downwards, that's a level of service issue. If they're drifting left, it's an overspend. If they're drifting right, it's an under-recovered, underspent. As to the detail around that 48% for transport, it's in the level of service exceptions at the back, and the remedial actions are there from the transport team as well.
Okay, so I'm happy to move that. Mel looks like she's happy to second it. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, Russell. I did see Russell. Yep. So you're going to go through the financial report.